Hello, and welcome to Not Very Scary Stories. For today's episode, I'll be hitting on another personal story of a house my wife, my friend, and I used to live in. This episode will be a little shorter than the rest due to the fact that the story I had for this could fill its own episode, and will next Friday. So be on the lookout for the next personal episode. I apologize for the lack of a personal episode last week because I just didn't have any personal stories to tell. But then I was reminded of this story from our friend who gave me permission to talk about the previous story, Keith Nash. So, be sure to leave a sub, follow, or whatever you can on whatever platform you're on. Also, be sure to leave a review so people will know to listen in as well. I'd like to thank you guys for the support thus far on all platforms you can find us on, including YouTube. I'd also like to remind everyone that if you have any scary stories or experiences you'd like to share, email me at darkskygamenews@gmail.com and tell me how you'd like to be credited. I'm Zenith Darksky, and I'll be your host tonight. Enjoy. A couple years ago, my wife and I started renting a house in my hometown with my best friend. Upon inspection, the house didn't quite look like anything above or below average, if anything, more below. The layout was nice and was probably the nicest house I'd ever lived in, even with its flaws, of which it had a great many for sure. The air conditioner could get clogged up easily. The basement was full of at least a foot of water unless it rained, then it would be more. It was also covered up by a pallet, so we never actually got around to seeing what exactly was in the basement. We had to personally install flooring in the master bedroom, as it was part of our deal to not have to put down a deposit and not have to pay some of our rent certain months. There was an unfinished door in the room for my friend Keith Nash. Unfinished as in no doorknob. It would still close, and most of the time, since it was off level, it would stay closed. Closet doors weren't here and there through the house, and many other issues, but it was cheap, and it was a shelter with power, water, internet, amenities. Some of the issues could be explained away with the fact that the house itself was extremely old, at least 100 years old to be exact. Before I get into the really creepy things, besides that the house was just creepy to my wife and Keith, I feel I need to explain a bit of the layout. So, picture a house from overhead. Kind of square, it's got curved corners here and there. Into the front, you have a living room with a fireplace that's open with a kitchen and a dining area. All in the same room, pretty much. To the left of the kitchen is a bedroom, or office, whatever you want to call it. It has a small room or closet that is open on two sides between that bedroom and a small room that is connected with the garage. More of a roomy hallway, if you'd prefer. The kitchen also has a tiny hallway leading to a bathroom and a utility room in the dead center of the house. The living room is L-shaped around the wall of the utility room that goes to the master bedroom, located in the back right, and an extra bedroom we use for the storage on the left but center back part of the house. That room is extremely important, though. The extra room wasn't finished at all, really. It had the original wood flooring. That wasn't the best looking at all. The window was a 2-pane window, and on the outside pane was a massive crack, possibly from a baseball, perhaps. I could at least tell you that this room creeped me out, if nothing else. But not as much as it utterly terrified my wife. We left the door to this room shut 95% of the time. To start, I'll tell you the minor incidents we had that creeped us out, like the fact that one of the windows in the master bedroom had a handprint on the outside pane of the window that never seemed to disappear. Even when I went outside with a glass cleaner, I couldn't get this handprint to come off my window. That falls to the side when you realize that I could barely sleep in that house due to what felt like someone constantly watching me. I don't even want to bring up the fact that I would occasionally hear my name being called while I laid down, and I'd wake to find no one else in the room with me, or my wife. She'd normally be asleep as I woke up before her for work, and Keith wouldn't have been awake either. Something a little less paranormally creepy would be the fact that the middle bathroom in the house had a window. A window to the garage. There was a curtain over it that we kept closed, but now that I think about it though, I never mentioned it to my wife or Keith, but sometimes it seemed like the curtain would be moved, just a little. It could have been nothing though. As some of you know, I'm a streamer. I use the room next to the garage as my streaming room. I can't count how many times I felt like something was watching me from that creepy ass garage, as there was a door with a window in it, located next to me. Not to mention, there were countless times that I would be streaming and thought I heard someone enter from the front door on the opposite side of the house. I'd feel the vibration in the floor and everything. I'd take my headset off, walk into the kitchen, and most of the time, it was nothing. And to be honest, that was scarier than when it was actually someone, even if the person wasn't invited. Now let's move back to the extra room. Keith had dogs, while my wife and I have cats and a dog. Many people and cultures believe that animals have a connection with the supernatural, or can even see supernatural entities. I'd say we're all inclined to believe after these events. There were numerous occasions that we would all be hanging out in the living room with nothing special happening, and sometimes the dog would just start barking at nothing. They had a tendency to look at absolutely nothing. They would get these weird mannerisms that animals get around things of a supernatural nature. They'd stare at nothing, they would bark at nothing, and they would tilt their head at nothing. The cats even had a tendency to stare at nothing as well, but just slightly up, as if it was a person standing there. But all the animals acted weird around the extra room. Occasionally we'd notice the cats meowing around the door and even playing with their paws under the doors. I finally got around to opening the door as they did that one evening to see if maybe there was a toy that had fallen under, and there was, of course, nothing there. The dogs would stare at the closed door of the room and occasionally bark abruptly as if they were surprised at the room. And all of us claimed that the room sometimes would just be colder than the rest of the house. But perhaps the scariest occurrences happened in Keith's room. There are two primary occurrences. There were numerous times that he told me of his dogs doing the same things they did in the living room, but again reacting to nothing in the room. The most notable times, though, were much more terrifying. One time, Keith was watching TV in his room with his dogs on his bed. Everything was going typically, but then his dog noticed something, or rather, noticed nothing, in his closet. His dog sat up and looked directly up as if at a person. Keith called the dog's name several times, but to no avail. The dog wouldn't look away with its tilted, confused stare. Finally, Keith moved the dog and he stopped. But it was still terrifying to Keith. That's not quite as bad as Keith's other scare. Another day, as Keith watched his TV sitting in the middle of his bed, his dog was sitting in front of him, facing him. Then he noticed something behind him, or rather his dog noticed something behind him. Keith noticed the behavior but thought nothing of it. However, that's when the dog started barking and actively ran away from where Keith was sitting, while continuously barking at seemingly nothing. You shouldn't need me to say that Keith quickly left that room. Come to find out, that 100-year-old house was actually a doctor's house. A doctor who used Keith's room for surgeries.